There is a mind that never stops moving. It shifts from thought to thought, worry to memory, memory to fantasy. You know this mind, it is yours. And somewhere beneath all that noise, something aches quietly, persistently, without a name. We were not taught to ask why we suffer. We were taught to push through it, to stay busy, to look away. But suffering does not disappear when we ignore it. It waits. It deepens. It finds other ways to speak. Consider the last time you felt truly at peace, not distracted, not entertained, not numb, but genuinely still inside and out. For most of us, that memory is distant or we cannot find it at all. That absence is worth examining. The ancient thinkers noticed something we still struggle to accept, that the mind creates much of its own suffering. Not all of it, real pain is real. But so much of what we carry is constructed, layer by layer, thought by thought. There is a gap, a space between the life you are living and the life you believe you should be living. It is narrow in some moments and vast in others. Inside that gap lives a particular kind of ache. We call it dissatisfaction. Desire is not the enemy. To want things, connection, meaning, warmth is human. But there is a kind of wanting that never rests. A hunger that eats what it is given and immediately needs more. That hunger is where suffering begins to root itself. Think of something you once wanted badly, a person, a moment, a version of yourself. Did getting it end the wanting, or did the shape of desire simply shift, pointing toward the next thing and the next? This is the cycle, and it exhausts us. Attachment is the thread that connects love to loss. When we hold something, or someone, and believe we cannot bear to live without them, we have already planted the seed of suffering. Not because love is wrong, but because impermanence is always watching. The mind resists what it cannot control. A conversation that went wrong, a door that closed, a future that refuses to take the shape you planned. This resistance, this insistence that things should be different, is one of the heaviest burdens a human being can carry. Regret lives in the past. Anxiety lives in the future. And somewhere between those two uninhabitable places, the present moment sits quietly, often overlooked, often abandoned. We visit it briefly and then flee again, chased by yesterday or pulled toward tomorrow. The body knows what the mind refuses to admit. Tension in the shoulders, tightness in the chest, the shallow breath of someone who has been bracing themselves for a very long time. These are not merely physical sensations. They are the language of accumulated pain. We look at others and imagine their lives are easier, that their minds are quieter, that they carry less. But suffering does not select its hosts by wealth or status or appearance. It is deeply, stubbornly democratic. Everyone is fighting something invisible. There is a self that observes, something within you that watches the thoughts come and go, watches the feelings rise and fall without being entirely swallowed by them. Finding that observer, learning to rest there even briefly, is the beginning of a different relationship with pain. Expectation is a form of preemptive grief. Every time we decide how something should unfold, how someone should behave, how a day should go, we prepare ourselves to be disappointed. Life rarely reads the script we have written for it, and we suffer for the difference. Nothing that exists stays the same. The weather changes. The body ages. Relationships evolve or dissolve. The mind that cannot accept this, that fights the flow of time at every turn, will find itself perpetually at war with the very nature of existence. We tell ourselves stories, that we are broken or behind or unworthy or too much or not enough. These stories feel like facts, but they are interpretations, narratives the mind has constructed to explain a pain it does not fully understand. Stories can be rewritten. Between what happens and how you respond, there is a moment brief, almost imperceptible. In that moment lives something precious, the possibility of choice. Most of the time, we never notice it. We react before we have even decided to, but it is always there, waiting. Suffering is not a punishment. It is not evidence that you are doing life wrong or that the universe has singled you out. It is, simply, part of what it means to be conscious, to feel, to care, to be invested in a world that keeps changing. But understanding suffering, looking at it directly, without flinching, changes something. It loosens the grip. It transforms pain from a wall into a doorway. You do not have to enjoy it. You only have to be willing to see what it is actually made of. This is an invitation. Not to fix everything, not to become someone who no longer hurts, but to sit with the question, why do I suffer? The answer, when it comes, does not arrive all at once. It arrives in small, quiet recognitions, each one a kind of relief. There is a gap inside you, a space between what your life is and what you believe it should be. And it is inside this gap, this narrow distance between reality and expectation, that most of your suffering quietly and invisibly lives. Every desire carries within it a seed of suffering, not because wanting is wrong, but because the moment you want something, you have already told yourself that what you have right now is not enough. That quiet message repeats constantly, beneath everything. The mind is a storyteller that loves to return to the past. It replays old arguments, old wounds, old moments of shame, not to help you heal, but because it has not yet found a way to let them go. You suffer old pain in the present moment. And then the mind leaps forward. Into tomorrow, next week, next year, it rehearses disasters that have not happened. It prepares for losses that may never come. This constant forward-reaching is called anxiety, and it is exhausting to live inside it every single day. Nothing in this world stays. The people you love will change. The seasons will turn. The body will age. And yet the deepest part of you reaches out and holds on, desperately, as if you could stop time itself. That clinging, that reaching, is the source of tremendous pain. You are not simply living your life. You are constantly telling yourself a story about your life. And most of that story focuses on what is wrong, what you lack, what others have done, what you are afraid of. The story itself becomes the suffering you carry. Somewhere along the way, you learn to measure yourself against others. Their success became your failure. Their ease became evidence of your inadequacy. This habit of comparison is worn so deeply into the mind that it feels like truth, but it is only one way of seeing, and it causes enormous harm. There is something inside you that believes, firmly, that if you just worry enough, plan enough, think enough, you can control what happens next. But control is largely an illusion. Life moves in ways the mind cannot prevent, and when that truth fully arrives, it can feel devastating. Much of suffering is not caused by what is happening. It is caused by the resistance to what is happening. The mind says no to pain, no to uncertainty, no to loss. But reality does not negotiate, and the harder you push against it, the more it pushes back. There is a weight that comes from constantly maintaining the self, the image, the identity, the story of who you are. You defend it, you protect it, you spend enormous energy keeping it intact. And beneath all that effort is always a quiet, persistent fear, that without it, you are nothing. Sit in silence long enough and something uncomfortable rises, a restlessness. A need to check something, do something, feel something different. That discomfort is not an accident. It is the mind revealing that it has learned to run from itself, perhaps for a very, very long time. Emotions are not who you are. They are weather moving through you, storms that arrive without warning and fade when they are ready. But the mind grasps at them, names them, builds identity around them. And in that grasping, a passing wave becomes a permanent and defining condition. The body remembers what the mind refuses to acknowledge. Tension lives in the shoulders, in the jaw, in the chest. Every unprocessed grief, every swallowed fear, every moment of rage never allowed, it finds a home in the flesh. The body is not separate from your suffering. We fill our lives with noise and motion because stillness is uncomfortable. The phone, the screen, the next task, the next distraction, they form a wall between you and the part of yourself you are most afraid to meet. But that avoidance has a cost. You never quite fully arrive. The mind generates tens of thousands of thoughts each day. Most of them are repetitive. Many are negative. And yet we treat each one as if it were real and urgent, as if it demanded our full and immediate attention. The exhaustion you feel is the cost of believing every thought. When you judge something as wrong, you instantly separate yourself from it. You place a wall between you and the experience. And while judgment sometimes serves a purpose, the constant habit of labeling everything, good or bad, worthy or not, creates a kind of quiet, chronic loneliness. Beneath most anger is something softer, a hurt that was too painful to stay with. Anger feels powerful, and so the mind reaches for it as a kind of armor. But the original wound remains untouched beneath the surface, waiting quietly to be seen and held with honesty. You can be surrounded by people and still feel profoundly, completely alone. This loneliness is not about proximity. It is about the distance between the self you show and the self you actually are. The wider that gap grows, the deeper the loneliness, no matter how many people fill the room. To protect yourself from pain, you built walls. You stopped trusting certain people. You stopped hoping for certain things. You learned to need less so that losing less would hurt less. These were strategies for survival, but they carry their own cost, a life lived at a careful, aching distance. But here, in this recognition, something quietly begins to shift. Not a sudden cure or a dramatic transformation, simply a moment of honest seeing. When you understand why you suffer, you are no longer entirely lost inside it. Understanding is the first, quiet opening of a door long kept closed. You have been fighting for so long. Fighting your thoughts, fighting your feelings, fighting the shape of your life. But beneath all that resistance, there is a quiet question waiting. What if you simply stopped? What if the war was never yours to win? There is a strange kind of relief in surrender. Not the surrender of giving up, but the surrender of letting what is true simply be true, of releasing the grip, of no longer demanding that life be different from what it already is. Acceptance does not mean indifference. It does not mean you stop caring or stop working to change things. It means you stop adding unnecessary suffering on top of what is already difficult. It means you stop punishing yourself for the simple fact of being human. Pain has a way of teaching what comfort never could. It strips away the unnecessary. It reveals what truly matters. In your most difficult moments, you have discovered things about yourself that no calm season could have ever brought to the surface. Inside you, there is something that watches. It watches your thoughts rise and fall like weather. It notices when you are afraid, when you are angry, when you are lost. This quiet witness has been there your entire life, untouched by any of it. Beneath every storm, there is deep water that does not move. Beneath every anxious thought, beneath every wave of sadness, there is a stillness in you that the storm cannot reach. You have always had access to it. You simply forgot it was there. You are not your thoughts. You are the one who hears them. You are not your emotions. You are the awareness in which emotions arise and dissolve. This is not a small distinction. It may be the most important thing you ever come to understand about yourself. Between what happens to you and how you respond, there is a space. It is small, sometimes barely perceptible, but in that space lives your entire freedom. The practice of a lifetime is simply learning to find that space and choose, with care, what to do with it. Offer yourself the same compassion you would offer someone you love. When they are struggling, you do not blame them for struggling. You do not demand they feel differently. You sit with them. You offer kindness. You deserve that same tenderness from yourself. What if today you declared a ceasefire, not with the world, but with yourself? What if, just for now, you stopped judging your own mind and simply let it be what it is, restless, uncertain, searching, and loved it anyway, exactly as it is? Nothing lasts. Not the sadness, not the emptiness, not the sense that things will never change. Everything that has ever visited you has also left. What feels permanent is only patient. The tide always turns. The heavy season always gives way to something lighter. The present moment is the only place where healing can happen, not in the past where the wound first opened, not in the future where you imagine finally being free of it. Only here, only now, this breath, this moment. This is where you begin. When suffering finally passes, and it will pass, what remains is not emptiness. What remains is a kind of clarity, a softness, a gratitude for small things that you perhaps could not have felt before. Suffering, as terrible as it is, carves space for depth. Peace was never somewhere else. It was never something you had to earn or achieve or finally deserve. It was here all along, waiting beneath the noise, beneath the rushing, beneath the ceaseless demand that you be more, do more, feel differently than you feel right now. The story you tell about your suffering is not the suffering itself. It is a layer added on top. And that layer, the interpretation, the meaning, the narrative of what it says about you, that can be gently set down, even when the pain itself cannot. The mind that cannot rest begins to rest, not by force, not by discipline, but by understanding. When you truly see why the mind runs, it slows. When you see why it clings, it loosens. Understanding is the gentlest path. It is the only path that lasts. There is another way to be in the world. Not constantly analyzing, not constantly defending, not constantly anticipating the next thing that might go wrong, just being present, just being here. It sounds almost too simple to be worth saying, and yet it changes everything. Every morning is an invitation to begin again without dragging every old weight into the new day. You do not have to carry yesterday into today. The slate is not fully clean, but the choice of how you hold it, that is always yours. You will forget this. You will get pulled back into the noise and the urgency and the old familiar ache. That is not failure. That is being human. The practice is simply returning, again and again and again, to what you already know to be true. The mind that cannot rest is not broken. It is searching. And one day, perhaps not today, but one day, it will find what it has always been looking for. Not somewhere out there, not in another life, but here, in you, in this quiet moment, right now.